Okay. Welcome, everyone, and you're welcome to my Take Chat show. It's another beautiful Saturday. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being a part of today's episode. We're super excited to have you here. My name is Adenyke, and you're welcome to my Take Chat show. I'm also here with my friends, um, Tosin, Faye, Tutu. You can say hello to everyone. Excellent. And we actually have a very special episode today. In case you're with us for the first time, and you're welcome to my I'm hearing some feedback. Chat show. It's another beautiful Saturday. Thank you for joining. Thank you. So we have two very special guests with us today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Let me start with Vivian. Let me start with the
lady. I wasn't sure if I should go ladies first.
Sorry.
Everybody. My name is Vivian. I'm happy to be here with everyone. It's exciting, and I can't wait to talk to everybody.
Excellent. And of course, the gentleman.
I guess afternoon, morning, depending on where you're from, where everyone is, everyone. My name is Timmy. I'm excited to be here and just giving, I guess, some of the male's perspective on being single.
Excellent. Sounds great. Glad to see you. Well, in case you're tuning in for the first time, my take is actually a virtual chat forum where women from across the world, we actually here are sitting in different locations all over the world, gather together to chat about lots of things going on around us, relationships and lifestyles as a whole. We lean into conversations, we bring a different perspective, and we try to make this very inclusive as we do so. We love to promote a culture of love and compassion, but we're very candid, and we believe that it's important that we speak truth to a lot of the issues around us. Today's episode is another debunking episode. Most of us are aware that we have this frequently. So we're going to be talking about debunking myths on being single. And as you can imagine, we have two amazing singles that are with us today. Phenomenal people doing amazing things. And we really want them to knock out some of these myths and tell us which ones are actually a fact. The truth of the matter is that there's so many challenges in the world today when it comes to relationships. Marriages breaking up, families broken, people just saying this, it's such a challenge today. Yet we find people knocking down a lot of people that are single or putting them, maybe some would say, maybe putting them under pressure. What gives, like my friend Faye would say. So today we want to really ask, are we being fair with this question? What's your take? So I'm going to kick us off by going to the first myth. So myth one says, if a person is single, it means they are too picky, too bossy, and their standards are probably too high, which is why nobody wants to be with them. So for ladies, for men, we hear men are a bit picky. Sometimes we hear for women, that girl, she is too bossy. And for men and women, your standard is too high. Bro, sis, lower it, no one is perfect. What do you guys think? Have you heard this before? But what do you think about this? Is this a myth or is it a fact? Let me start again with Vivian.
Yes, I've heard it so often, maybe too many times. Like, people just assume that I'm picky because I'm in my 30s and I'm single. And we tend to assume this of people, but I disagree. I don't think so. I think that people know the kind of person that they can live with, they can grow with. And sometimes there are people who are satisfied being single, maybe because they have plans or goals that they want to achieve before they do get married, or maybe they're just working on themselves. Because definitely some of us may have issues or baggage or things that we're dealing with. And we just think that marriage is another phase that we might take on later in life, not necessarily at this moment. I don't think single people are bossy, picky. I think they've just made choices to be single, or they have some.
All right. So, Timmy, what do you think? Interesting take from Vivian.
Let's see. I think sometimes we have myths. In my opinion, some myths are true, and some myths are not. Right? Some myths are true depending on the person in regards to, where they are in their life. Um, can I say that at one point I was picky when I was younger? Oh, I'm not going to sit here in front. Oh yeah, I was very picky. But I think at a certain point in my life, I did change in terms of some of the things that what I see to be important and what I'm looking for, what I'm looking for in regards to my standards. My standards has changed dramatically. So, and I think maybe that probably could have stopped me in my singleness when I was, in my singleness in terms of how I look and how I'm looking for in regards to the woman I'm looking for. But that's because I was in a different place in my life. So I do think that it just depends on the stages where we're at. At some point, some people find themselves and realize that they are, and their standards tend to change as they get older, as they mature, and realize that things are not black or white as we think they are.
Okay, you're muted. Or is it just me?
Yeah, she is muted.
Yes, thank you very much. Apologies. I was trying to avoid some of the technical issues coming from my end. No, but I was just saying that was a very fantastic point by that you just raised, Timmy, in terms of actually it's fair enough to say at different stages, depending on what you felt you wanted, you may have been picky, but it could be a function of being in a particular space. So does that mean that statement can be a fact, but it can also be a myth? Depending on the individual. Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Hands down, yes.
I feel like picky.
Okay.
Using the word picky is kind of negative. I don't know. Maybe
Okay.
people just have choices that they'd rather live with. So I mean, I don't know. I guess we can say both ways. It's a myth sometimes. It's a fact. Yeah.
I hear you. Okay, I hear you. That's a good one. Okay.
Yeah.
Right then.
Right. All right. The next myth we're going to tackle is myth number 2. And it says, as a single person, you should commit yourself wholeheartedly into God's work. What do I think about this? Yes, I believe, single, married, everyone should commit themselves. But as a single person, I mean, what is our assignment on this earth? Pending the time that God brings someone to you. And I could be wrong. I've been married since 24. So what do you think, Timmy? Let's start with you.
That's so like on my journey. Like I've noticed like right now in my singleness right now is because I'm definitely single right now. It's also a little bit by choice and by circumstance, right? I'm single in right now because I got to a point where God was telling me, hey, there's some things that he wants me to focus on. Right. And he was like, I want you to focus on some things. And if I was to be in a relationship, then I would take that focus away from what he has set for me. Right. So he's actually asked me, he was like, I need you to be on this journey for X amount of time. And I remember this is the truth. Like I remember calling one of my accountability partners and being like, man, I think God told me I need to be single for next 3 years. And he was like, what? And, his response was like, you gonna do that? Are you sure you're gonna be able to make that? And I was like, man, I don't know, man. I don't know. We both were like crying, like, I don't know what God trying to. And, because some people, they desire to be single. And there's some people, they desire to have a family. I'm not the person that desires. I'm not going to say that I desire to be single. No, I do desire to be in a relationship and to have a family. So it's, but I think sometimes it all depends. Like, and this is the first time that I think God was like, yo, I want you to be, to be in this place for a certain amount of time because of what I'm asking for you to do. So I think it depends on where we're at. Because I don't think that if I was younger, I don't think if God told me that, I'd have been like, man, you playing. And I would have listened. I would have been like, whatever. I was like, oh, hi, how you doing? And then try to talk to the next person.
Okay, Vivian, before we come to you, Aramis has a question. Does that mean your assignment stops when you get married? Go ahead, Vivian. You're shaking your head.
So no, your assignment doesn't stop when you get married. You continue whatever work God has assigned to you. I do want to say that we need to define what God's work is, because I believe what's most important that should be fact is developing your relationship with God. But there are sometimes when we think God's work means being in church 7 days a week. For me, at what point are you now going to go ahead and mingle with other singles and actually get to know someone you want to get married to? So I think that commitment to God's work should be really, really explained and understood by everybody involved, including the church, including singles, because the church may not have that avenue for singles to come together and get to know each other better so I don't see the point why I should always be in church. So I think it's a fact that we should develop our relationship with God, because the Holy Spirit does work in us as single people in preparing us for the next stage, whether it's marriage or to continuously remain single. I think it's a myth that we should commit ourselves wholeheartedly to God's work.
Yeah, and I agree with Vivian. Sorry, I agree with Vivian. And the scripture in Hebrews 10:25 that says, "Forsaking not, the gathering of yourselves as the manner of some is." I feel that sometimes people, just take it and think it's only gathering in church. It could also mean, gathering, mingling with other people outside of church. So yes, we are, all of us, married or single, we are all called to commit ourselves wholeheartedly to God. But at the same time, we are called to relate with other people outside of just doing God's work. So for some people that, use church, or their relationship with God as a cop-out, not to relate with other people. And, I just think those kind of people, some of them are just very lazy. They don't want to go out and do the work. The men don't want to go out and look for the women. In fact, even the Bible says, he who finds a wife, so that means you have to go out and look for the wife. She may be in church, she may be outside of church. So I think it's a myth. Thank you.
I think with everything in life, there's a balancing act, single or married. So while you're devoting yourself wholeheartedly to God, you understand, if this is a desire for you, there are aspects in which you need to, balance everything out, and don't just dive into saying, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to blind my eyes to everyone around, because God, I think if that's a desire, you need to shine your eyes. Like they'll say. All right. Faye?
Yeah.
You're muted, yeah.
I think you both raised some really important points. I mean, like to Vivian's point, what is God's work? God said his main commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So as long as you're doing that, you're doing God's work, whether it's in or outside the church. But to Timmy's point, I think this is also an important one. And it's one I ask people actually. Life is not, generic. Everyone has a customized relationship with God. Everyone should work out their salvation. That's one of my favorite scriptures. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. What is God saying to you if we believe that God is in control? And to Timmy's case, this is actually an interesting one that is very interesting to me. God specifically is telling him in this time you should be single. And maybe, God is saying that to a lot of singles, and they're not hearing because they're not spending the time in prayer. Maybe there's a reason, as opposed to just living a life of frustration or being unhappy. Anyway, leading to my second question. The third myth, does the fact that you're single mean that you're unhappy? Does it mean that your life will magically be happier when you're in a relationship? As someone who has been married for over 20 years, I can say that yes, I'm thankful to God that I'm in a happy marriage. But I know many people who are not. So I don't know that marriage is that magic wand that leads to some, some happy life, right? I'd be curious to hear your take. Starting with Timmy, what do you think?
So, it's funny that we even brought that up. I literally was having a conversation with one of my friends yesterday, and I think she's been married for, I think, over 20 something years, right? She's like, she got, no, well, I think maybe like 15, I can't remember, but she's been married, she's in her 30s, but she's been married when she was like 20, 23 or something like that. And, we were talking about happiness, right? We were talking about happiness, and how we were talking about how some people, even in their singleness, thinking that being in a marriage, they will just automatically be happy. And not realizing that there's just as much work it is to be single, right? If you desire to be in a relationship, there's also work being in a marriage as well, right? And we were talking about it, and it's true. I think really, in honesty, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that if people understand in terms of who they are and being happy with themselves first before going into the relationship, then what happens is that they're not trying to draw strength and draw happiness from the other person, because they've already established that happiness prior to. But what happens a lot of time is that a lot of people, what they do is that they, I don't want to say a lot of people, because when I really sit down and reflect, I can't sit here and pretend like I've been this perfect happy person all of my life. No, there was times in my life that I went into a relationship thinking that I would be in this relationship looking for happiness from that other person, right? And it took time for me to get to the place where, as I matured, and not only just matured as an individual, but matured in my relationship with Christ, I started to draw strength in my happiness, where my happiness was, where I was happy because of my relationship in Christ. So now I know that going into a relationship, I'm not trying to look for happiness from that person, because I'm already happy. It's just now I just need to know and understand what are the things that I need to work on as a person to make the relationship be fruitful.
Very interesting response. Vivian, what are your thoughts?
No, well said, Timmy. I think it's a myth that single people are unhappy, because I think happiness comes from within. If you're unhappy as a single person, you're most likely going to be unhappy as a married person, because I've learned over time that except someone has peace or joy or happiness within, they can't give that back to you. So if you see people who are toxic, it's what they have on the inside. And there was a time in my life where I thought, being in a relationship with this person was going to make me happy. And that was when I was much younger. So I had such high expectations of the person. And I had expectations that they couldn't meet, because I had some story up in my head that this was supposed to be perfect. This was going to work out. There were things that you were supposed to do to make me happy. And it was just crash and burn. So it's if you expect that being married is going to make you happy, then I don't think that's the right foundation. I think that's setting yourself up for failure. And I think that's not giving the other person a break. So life will not be magically happier when you're in a relationship or when you're married. Happiness comes from within.
Indeed. I think this whole point of expectations is an important one. When you're expecting the person to be the all in all, and the person that is going to now be your source of joy. God is our source of joy. So we start from there and then we move forward. So yeah, really deep answers.
Yeah, I used to call that actually unrealistic. I think for a while I used to say that was unrealistic expectations. Like, we have unrealistic expectations, you know what I'm saying, of each other, and sometimes even of ourselves.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I always say something. Marriage magnifies a lot of things. So, like Vivian said, you come in unhappy, it's going to be magnified, and you come in happy, it's going to be magnified, because marriage exposes a lot of cockroaches and everything. It exposes. It shows how you've been selfish. It shows how you've been all to yourself. It shows a lot of things that you've not worked on as a single person. So
So I guess I didn't say it earlier, but I think that this is one of those that, in my opinion, it's hard to say it's a myth or fact, because I can't say I haven't met people, nor been there with that people are unhappy, right, and they think that going into a relationship they can. Nor I can't say that what I mean, that it's that not everyone is in that circumstance. So I don't know. I think this was hard for me. I can't say it's a myth or fact, because I know people in both spectrums.
So, and that's a good point. Maybe because when I read it differently, when you said that to me, I almost feel as if we can end up with two clear answers. Single people are unhappy. Fact. Myth. Some single people are happy, but definitely if we say some single people are unhappy, yes. But your life will magically be happier when you're in a relationship. I think that is a myth. So, that one is a myth,
Big myth.
Big one. Person's point, honestly speaking, the only thing being in a relationship with the person does is magnify who you are. What makes marriage even more quote unquote dangerous is that you cannot then easily get away from them. That's the only thing. Because at least if you enter a relationship, I'm like, I thought I'll be happy. You know what? I'm not doing it again. But in a marriage, where are you going to? You go to the other room, you come out in the morning, they are right in front of you. So that second part is a myth. But I hear you, Timmy, when the first part is a fact that some people are unhappy, and like Vivian said, we really need to look at it. But yeah, absolutely.
I'm writing those down. I'm writing those down. What you just said now. So keep that in mind.
And there's this old saying that people say love is blind, but marriage is an eye opener.
Yeah.
Love is not blind, though.
The eyes are wide open.
Yeah. So this brings us to the next myth, that as soon as you're satisfied with God alone, He'll bring someone special into your life.
Huh?
Vivian is laughing. What do you think about
Vivian
that?
is like, what kind of question is that?
Help us out.
So as soon as you're satisfied with God alone, I don't know what that means, because I don't know that I'm still learning about God every day. So if I feel like then that means it's going to take me forever before I find someone. But I disagree. I think this is a myth, because you can never be satisfied with God. Like, the more I discover myself, the more I understand more about God, the more I read the word, I understand new things about God, new things about people and how He relates with them. So I do think that God will bring something into your life. I don't think He's necessarily going to bring, the way He brought Eve to Adam and point her towards you. No, because even Adam himself was not satisfied on his own, in my opinion. But I do know that I think this is a myth. This is just a myth for me in my life. I haven't got to the point of complete satisfaction with God yet. And I'm hoping, Lord, please, like, He's not waiting for me to get to that point before I find someone. So I hope it's a myth.
And if I can even just put a pointer in there, I almost think as if it's a myth that most people don't realize because they don't think about it. And maybe I should position this how it shows up in a quote unquote encouragement. I know there's been encouragement to say, work, continue to follow your passion. If you're single, follow what God has for you. When God knows it is time, He will bring that someone special into your life. So sometimes that is a roundabout way of almost, and I remember we had one of those back in the day, single session, and somebody saying, I can point to 2 or 3 of my friends that don't know what they're doing. They're married right now. They are moaning all the time. We're all in church here, and I know they're angry, they're miserable, and they are not much more spiritual than me. How ready were they when God decided it was time? So I realized that, I've listened to sermons, and I guess they mean the right thing, but you're right, Vivian. It's unconsciously maybe, and I pray I've not said it, but maybe I have, and I've grown better now. But we have to be, I kind of feel it's what's that word? Christianese phrase.
Yeah.
Just continue to love God, just continue to follow God when it's the right time. Continue to grow in God. When is the right time, He will bring someone special into your life. Now, I'm not going to automatically say that your steps will not be ordered by God, but I think maybe the way the two phrases are joined could connote something else than what was originally intended, or leave people with something else. I don't know if this is something that I feel some things don't apply to men. Timmy, correct me. Also, I think some people say that to men. Is it me? I hear them say, if a man is ready, a man is ready. They don't say that, am I wrong, Timmy?
That's a good one. That's a good one. For from a man perspective, it's that's a good one. I think we because what Vivian said is so true, right? I think when I look at it, you know, Adam was alone, and he was sad. He had God to himself. He wasn't sad. I mean, look, and God realized, like, yo, like, you have me, and he was like, but you're alone, and I need to provide you with someone, right? So and he did. I think what I've noticed, right, and I think for some men too, or for some people, or just men too, is that what I've noticed is that when I stop trying so hard to look for someone is when or I'm at a place where I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna relax. I'm not gonna do anything. Is when a million people come out of nowhere, right? And then when I'm like, oh man, I'm ready now. God, like like I'm ready to look for someone and send some. That's when I'm like, man, ain't nobody out here. Like what's going on? And it's funny because even within like other men's, like our men's group. I mean, we have those type of conversations, like brothers, brothers be like, oh, there's nobody out here, you know what I'm saying, and then we'll ask them, well, are you out? Are you looking for someone? Are you putting an effort to go out? Or what? Don't worry about it. And it's funny because we say the same thing, like God's gonna bring someone, God's gonna send someone that right. So and it's funny because we say, which I think is a myth, and if we say God's gonna bring the right person, right? And I think God's gonna bring someone who's gonna be, who's going to help support you, right? Who's going to help support you in terms of the things that you want to do. But I don't, I mean, I think as men too, I think we have that for guys who are ready, because I think that's the other thing, is that guys need to be ready to be in a relationship. And when they're ready to be in a relationship, and we tend to it takes us a little bit longer for majority of us, not all of us. It takes us a little bit longer for us to be truly ready, so that way we can be the best version of ourselves in terms of being in a relationship.
Let me jump in. Okay. And I want to ask you a question, Timmy. Why do guys think they need to be 100% ready? Why? Okay, let me just give you a statement. My husband I got married at 24. He got married at 26. He definitely wasn't ready. We've been married for over 20 years now. And I'll say we have grown together and built, what we have built together and still building. But why do men think they have to be ready? Why can't you get someone that would be a destiny helper? Okay. Someone with your partner that will grow together. Why must you be ready? That's the question for you.
So some of it. So if I'm going to be brutally honest about this, some of it is women's fault at times, right? If I'm going to be brutally honest, let me explain. So it's women's fault and society. So women. So think, and I remember we used to joke about this. Here you have a guy who's ready, but then you meet women who society pushes us, right? It's a trap. I know, right? I got trapped. Society pushes us. Society, and also sometimes women says, oh, they're looking for a man to be at a certain place. Like, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? And if they don't, then what happens is that you are then belittled, right? Or you are then not. So it's like, or like, oh, do you have a home? You know what I'm saying? Do you have a home? Like, why don't you have a home? You know what I mean? Like, before you get into. So then what happens that we're teaching men, even children, like even kids at a younger age, you have to have these X, Y, and Z before you can even think about being in a relationship, right? So then it's like, You know what I mean? It's like, or if you don't, you know the wahala, you know the trouble you're going to have. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, you come in this relationship, and it's like, you know what I mean? If you don't have all these things set forth, right? So then what happens is that, you know, like it's funny you said it, because I had a friend, literally, he was like, oh yeah. I was like, well, what about, have you thought about, you know, doing a relationship? He was like, oh man, I'm not ready yet, because I don't, you know, I need to make sure that my stuff is right. Like, I need to make sure, because it's like, if I don't have my stuff right, I don't want the person who's like, we think that sometimes we have this perception that we think that women are always understanding, and it's like, you come into it and it's like, oh, or like what I hear someone say, like, oh, you don't have a car. So you're taking, so here you are saying, oh, you know, you're saying to us, you're like, oh, well, my husband, he didn't have everything. That's true. Well, I'm gonna look at you and be like, you're just an understanding wife. You know what I mean? And you were
Oh,
understanding. Not every woman comes in there from that perspective and understanding. They expect you to have all this, to be financially right, to be emotionally right, to be, you know what I mean? Because they're like, if you're going to lead me, you need to, if you're going to be the person to be the lead in this in a relationship, you better be right with God, right with your money, right with your emotions, right with, and so guys come in that perspective and think, I need to be this before I can even think about being in a relationship.
This is such an important point, and it actually
Warming up.
speaks to the stereotypes we were talking about in our last session, where we were talking. I mean, well, I don't know if it was the last one, but one that we were talking about stereotypes. Are men ATMs? You know, are men just the ATM, the providers, and women are just the ones in the kitchen and all of that? So it's really like itself. It's really actually, it defeats the purpose on all sides, because, like Tulsi, my husband and I got married very early and we built together. So maybe that's the key. Maybe that's what we need to be telling women, is you need to be understanding why. It's not just about, I mean, on one hand, we have all the feminism, you know, I want to, you know, you can't be my boss or you can't be the head of me. But on the other side, you're not understanding, or you expect them to come ready-made. It's kind of a challenge. Vivian, what would you say to that? I mean,
Yes, I have a
get your
response to
perspective.
that, because
Go
it's
ahead.
funny that I hear men are the ones facing pressure. I feel like women were the ones with a lot of pressure. Like, from when you're a kid, they're telling you things like, oh, you have to learn to take care of your husband, you have to learn to take care of kids, you have to learn to cook, all these things. So we've had pressure from when we were babies on what it means to be a wife. And then we grow up to a certain age and we've been preparing ourselves for this. And then you go into a relationship with someone who expects you, or sometimes they're demanding you to perform the duties of a wife when you're not my husband. So these kind of things, like,
wow.
I get it that a man is not ready. Stay on your own. Stop disturbing us. Because it's very simple. Like, if you feel like you are not ready to be in a relationship that's going to lead to marriage, or you're not ready to have that emotional balance or financial balance, whatever it is, it's a simple fact of love. To me, is what it means. It's what it means to me. It's not what it means to the next girl. So if my love is that you should have a certain kind of car, and you know that you're not up to it, then find somebody who's willing to walk that mile with you, take the bus, take the train, whatever it is. But if you now see a situation where you know that a man is not ready to be in a committed relationship, but you're making demands of a woman who is single, trying to figure out her life, and making her seem like she should do these things to earn your love, then that's a problem. For me, I feel like the pressure is both ways. The pressure is there because people feel like, if you're not doing these things, you see men who threaten women, okay, if you're not going to do this, I'm going to move on to the next girl. And yes, there are women that are willing to give a man everything he wants. It may not necessarily be what I am willing to give. So I don't see where people are saying, I'm not ready. Then why are you in relationships? So that's the part that I don't get. Chris.
Wow. Well, yeah, Chris just sent a message to you, Vivian. So what do you think about that?
That's men have been prepared for when we're kids to just I don't know about that though. Because the truth is, let me tell you, I understand that you've been pressured to take care of kids, right? But honestly, sometimes I feel like men have children and don't really understand the responsibility that it is. It's not just financial. Being a father is also emotional support. It's spiritual support. And these are things that sometimes a lot of women understand, and trying to explain that to a man might be difficult for him to understand as well. So yes, I agree there is pressure on both ends, but then what are those expectations we bring when we come into that relationship? If you say that you were pressured to prepare to provide, then are you there yet? If you know that you're not there yet, stay single, enjoy yourself. Don't put pressure on another woman who is there and you're not just there with her. So that's the way I see it. It may not be so black and white, but we should really be helping each other here. So
Okay.
Timmy.
It sounds to me, in fact, I think so. Tosin asked this question. Timmy gave an answer. We got different answers, and Vivian rounded it up. And by the time Vivian rounded it up, I agree with Timmy that Tosin, when you say, why do they have to be ready? That's why they have to be ready. Because
Vivian made the points.
yeah, so I think this even makes it a bit more. And I think Christopher was trying to make that point. Christopher kept on saying, you women have pressure, our own is more, our own is more. By the time we got finished, because men now realize that, when I go into this relationship, as wonderful as this woman is, there's one day I'm going to face her firing squad of questions. Oh yeah, what's the bank account? Oh, yeah, how many children? Are you emotionally ready? So let me be ready before coming to meet her. But while all of this is so interesting, and I do think, however, there has to be a balance because we really go into life and marriage as two imperfect people that come together with certain values in life that enables us work together. Because I think what Vivian said is absolutely a woman will have a standard. But I also know that something she said, and maybe because I know a bit about a lot of other women, is when a man shows up, though, with a clear sense of responsibility, although he may not have everything it takes for him at this point, but he knows his yardstick, he knows the level he wants to operate on, he's working on it every day, and he has faith in God to get there. When a woman sees that genuineness in a man, then the help meet in her can spring up to support him. A lot of what Vivian has said for a lot of women is when they probe and they see a gap in that area, like you haven't really thought through those things, then that's when there's a concern. But if we know that there is a man who knows where he needs to be, the standard, then they know where they have to support or plug in. And I think that brings me to the next myth.
Wait, Nike, sorry,
yes.
Please, before you read the next myth,
yes.
Timmy said something crucial. He said, there are some guys that, when they are ready, they can't, it seems like there are no women out there. Timmy, please, I'm using this forum to announce.
Oh my!
Please, Timmy, send me such men. I have a Rolodex of women.
Thank you.
Please, of all ages. So all these men that are ready, on their way to readiness, almost ready, please send them to me.
Okay, Tutu, you've done your plug. You've done your
Yes, Tutu start time. Tutu is her side hustle is professional matchmaker. She's in the process of launching a reality TV show, so she's always ready. She has her Rolodex ready. Thank you so much. But this whole conversation, and I'm going to bring this question, I'm going to throw it out, and then I'll really maybe explain what I mean by it. So the next myth I wanted us to plug in is singleness means no intimacy. So first of all, let me ask, before I say what I think that means, let me ask, Timmy, if you hear that as a single guy, what does that mean to you? Singleness means no intimacy.
So I think it all depends on what intimacy is. Like, what does intimacy mean for each person? I think one thing is that, like, once I understood my love language as in terms of what I thought intimacy for me was, and it was different. But also too, I also think it depends on. We're on this call to be frank and be open, right?
Sure.
Intimacy when I was younger, also too was a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a saint, and I was a person where intimacy was, a place where it was this idea that physicality was what was mostly intimacy, right? And that's not and as I've gotten older, I realized that that's not the truth. Right? That's intimacy has become something different, right? It's become where I was talking to my cousin actually, and I was telling her, and I was saying, man, I just got into this relationship, and this is like about 2 years ago, or I think a year ago or so. And I was telling her, I was like, this is the first time that I've ever been intimate with someone, like so intimate with someone that it wasn't the physicality of the person that I wanted to, that my mind was going to of intimacy. It was the fact that we just bonded in an intimate way, that that intimacy was based on our relationship with God, our intimacy bond in terms of a lot of it was our conversation. Our intimacy was played in terms of just both of us understanding each other, right? Understanding each other, and wanting to do things. And that was, I was telling her, I was like, that's the first. I said, that's so different for me. I've never, where before my intimacy was based off of my interaction of when I saw that person, I was like, ooh, oh, I was like, ooh, okay, like, and it was the physical that drew me towards the intimacy, right? It wasn't anything else. Where now I met someone, meeting someone, and then what drew me, the intimacy, that I was yearning to, wanting to be around that person because of what they were bringing to my life in terms of how we connected, and and how we connected with God too as well, right? And I think I wasn't, like I said, that was I'm growing, right? And as I'm growing in my relationship with God, I'm starting to grow in terms of what I could define what intimacy is.
Okay, I like that. Okay, let me throw it. Just give me a clap there. Let me ask Vivian before I then, give my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with Timmy. It depends on what intimacy is. For some people, intimacy means having sex. For some people, it's really about the mind and the connection. So on my own part, I'm attracted to the way a man thinks. It means a lot to me. Maybe that's why I'm still single, because many times when I have conversations with people who, we're dating, like it's a lot about sex. So I'm like, it doesn't, I don't know, such conversations, I don't know where they're meant to get to. So, but if you see intimacy as sex, and it means no, because the Bible is completely against it, and God says, stay completely away from sex, then I get that that's a fact. If you see intimacy, like I like to cuddle, and if I'm in a relationship with someone that I know that cuddling is going to makes it more difficult for them to stay away from sex, those are things that I avoid. But for some people, they can handle it. So it really also depends on who you're in a relationship with. Timmy's, like he said, for him, understanding now that intimacy was the way they conversate with each other, the way they connect. So I think it depends. It really depends on what intimacy is. Yeah.
I think both of you just hit the nail, and thank you so much, because when I really put that forward, I think Timmy said it from the first two lines when he said, what do we mean by intimacy? Because the myth is that intimacy has been linked so closely with sexuality today that I think it has robbed so many people. It's actually had a very negative impact on marriage. And the reason is because a lot of scriptures in the Bible, in Proverbs, it talks about the friend that sticks closer to a brother. It's saying that there is a level of intimacy, which means, like someone says, intimacy, where you have friendship, heart-to-heart conversations, really able to understand each other. And so many people, because they skipped that level of depth of intimacy while in courtship, when they got married, I see couples have misunderstandings and fights, and the things that happen and what they say, you wonder, are you friends? And so I found out that, a lot of challenges in marriages today because couples are not really intimate friends with each other. And that intimacy comes from really building it before you get married, really saying, is this my friend? Do I like this person? Come rain, come shine. It is that intimacy, that kind of non-sexual intimacy that helps you know that you can proceed with marriage, where physical intimacy just becomes sweeter and better because of the richness of it. So I think, I don't know what you think, Faye. I think that's really, thank you very much.
Absolutely. My goal was always to get married to my best friend. And I was fortunate enough to do that, because that's what lasts. That's what lasts. So, I think you guys got the question. When Nika first posed that question, I really didn't get it. I was like, okay, I don't understand this question, but you guys are sharper than me, so good for you. You got it. Yes, okay, so now let's go on to another myth. Let's go on to another myth as time runs out. So this is one that I think on this one, I think women get it more than men to me, but let me go. The older I get, the less likely it is that I will find someone. True or false? So I'm of two minds. Here's the thing. I mean, the dating pool definitely gets shallower, right? I have many friends who are not yet married, and I have to say, my faith is getting weaker and weaker that we're gonna find someone. So you see, Tutu's desperation, we have our reasons. The pool is getting shallower. But on the other hand, I know people that have gotten divorced and they are married again. I know people that. So I feel like there's also a type, or maybe there's an attitude that really it doesn't matter how old you are. I feel like there are two parts. I think of course biologically and just looking at the statistically, yes, but in other ways I see different things. So it'd be interesting to hear. Vivian, what do you think?
I think it's a myth that the older you get, you will find someone. I think that's a myth. I do think it's a fact that you have less options because especially if you're looking for someone as a woman who is older than you. But if you don't mind being with someone who is younger, then the pool is even wider. But I would say that I guess for men and women, it kind of goes both ways. I feel like for women, because of society, because of what we've been expected to see a husband as, the pool does get more limited as you get older. That is the fact. I do know many people who are in their 40s, their 50s. My uncle married at 50 and he married a woman in her 40s. So, and that was both their first marriage. So I'm just saying it that you will find someone, especially God willing, and with God on your side and God giving everybody direction. I think that you will find someone no matter what age you are. I do know that you will have less options. Yeah.
In fact, Vivian, your uncle is an exception to many men out there, because from experience, in talking to guys, most times once men cross 40, I personally have issues with men 40 and above that are single, because once they cross 40, they are looking for girls that are in their 20s.
18.
In fact, even the ones that are 50, they'll say, oh, I don't want her to be more than 35. And in fact, I don't even get me started. So this is a very good area for me. So I actually feel that, the pool does get, slimmer for women, but for men, I don't know. I think many men, let me not generalize now, many men are really making it very, very difficult with their unrealistic expectations for what they want. And I'm even talking about men in church.
Yes, of course.
Let's
Talking
let's
about many
let's hear what Timmy. I'm very curious to hear what Timmy has to say. Timmy, I need to hear you.
Indeed.
I think one thing we're not touching on is that when people get older, they get settled in their ways, and some people don't want to bend. And what happens at time is like, what I mean, some people get to the place where they're like, you know what? I already know what the work is going to be in that marriage. I'm too old right now to even think about putting the effort, the time, and I desire not to. And I think what happens is that people tend to actually close the opportunity for them to look for someone, because they've gotten to a place where they're like, I'm not willing to compromise, nor do I desire to compromise, nor do I want to compromise, right? So, and because they don't want to compromise in that relationship, they're like, I'm okay, I'll just be single, like I'm good, like, you know what I mean? And for some people, they still have a desire that they want to. So I think it depends on where the person's at. Like I have one of my good friends, you know what I mean? He's like in his late 40s. And I was like, so when are you gonna get married? And he was like, man, I'm done, dog. He was like, I'm good. He's like, I'm happy now by myself and I don't want to compromise. And he knew exactly what he wanted.
Can I say something? I think it's wrong to think that people are set in their ways when they get to a certain age. I think that especially for women are very adaptable, and we are willing to learn and grow whatever that man is, no matter how old we are. That's one thing that I would say. I would say that it's harder to change a man when he gets to a certain age. So maybe for men, yes, that's true. But for women, I don't think so.
Vivian, I disagree with you.
Thank you.
I disagree. I
Thank you.
disagree.
As I'm
Yeah,
Vivian,
You
I
want both ways.
disagree. A lot of my matured single ladies are also set in their ways.
Yes.
Adaptability is not their second name.
Thank you.
But you know that if they meet the right one, though, they will.
No, I totally understand that. But I'm
Yes.
telling you, it takes a lot to merge when they get to a certain age. And that's it. So
You see what
on
I
to
said
our
earlier?
next.
I said you were understanding. You see earlier, huh? You see how
Whatever.
you are understanding, sir.
Me.
Okay.
Yo.
For the sake of time, we have to move on to the next myth. And
Okay.
this one, I came up with this one. I said, Nika, you must add this one because this one is a big one. Okay. Uncle Timmy, please explain this. Single men have a phobia of commitment. What is going on here? Explain.
Oh gosh. You know, I honestly think that, you know, I think both men and women have a phobia of commitment, and I think that social media and the digital world has created more phobias than it has before in the past. What happens is that we sit back and, you know what I mean, like, and what we do a lot of times when I talk to, you know, because I work a lot with the youth, and I'm just listening to them. I used to work at the church with the youth, and just listening to the guys, and then listen to the girls, and then when I talk to my older friends, and I realize, man, it's a lot of fear. Right. And what happens is that a lot of fear is placed on people. Fear commitment based on what they saw in the household. People fear commitment based off what they see on, oh, I watched this, what's on YouTube. Can you believe what this, that ain't gonna be me. You know what I'm saying? And it goes and or people fear because they have a friend who went through something, right? A friend didn't have a good relationship. And now what's happened is that everyone is sitting here in fear of commitment, right? Everyone is like, man, I'm not going to be in this position where next, you know what I mean? I've heard stories where, you know, guys crying because the person, you know what I mean, because the person that they were with and what they did, and you're thinking, not me, oh. You know what I'm saying? Like, God, please, not me. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, but I think it goes on the same end. Like, women hear the same thing. And then what people do is they come into the relationship already guarded, and so guarded that they don't even allow themselves to be open to see the goodness in that other person. So I think social media has just really destroyed this whole idea of what social media, and we don't have enough people who can speak positively of relationships and talk about what marriage has done that's been so great. Everyone tends to, the first thing they do is they go to, you know, if you want to be single, you better be single for life. Don't be, you know what I mean? I mean, are you sure you want to go into this marriage, versus talking about it from a positive place and then say, you know, I mean, listen, there's going to be commitment. The question is, are you ready for it? And are you open? And are you ready to be committed to compromise? And that's the part that people don't do. We don't talk enough about.
This is such an important point. The fact that we really focus on the bad news in social media. Those are the only things, the stories that go viral are the negative ones. You don't really see positive marriage stories going viral typically. It's a good point, actually. Everybody is now very jaded and guarded. But even the older you get, the worse that gets. So to that other question we just asked.
Yeah. I think one thing I did like real quick is like there's this thing called Black Love. I'm not sure if anybody ever seen the videos, and I think I loved it because in my mind I was thinking it's starting to change the narrative. It's starting to change the narrative of what marriage looks like, where people are actually talking about the good, the bad, but then talking about why the good is so much better than the bad that we tend to hear about majority of the time.
Yeah, I'd like to add, there was something that Jimmy posted, Jumoke. She said, you know, a lot of social media shows a lot about the success, but not the positive outcomes of the struggles. And I think that there are people who have that phobia, not necessarily for the commitment, but for the drama that we just see about marriage. I blame this a lot on married people. Forgive me, but I feel like there's just this pressure and rush to single people get married, get married, get married. But then we're looking at people's marriages and we're like, I don't know. to be that paranoid. Like, I don't know. And then, sometimes, like, you might come and you're volunteering in church, and it's the married people that are always speaking quarrel with you, fighting, and you're wondering, I don't know what I did to this person. Like, it's like there's just so much that maybe they didn't deal with at home that they're carrying around. And then another thing, because I really hope that, because the Bible talks about mothers preparing the young ones about what it means to be married. The same thing with fathers. Like, if we're honest with each other, there are certain things that my mother took that I can't take. So if we're also understanding that, look, we are preparing our young ones, preparing the single people and saying, this is what it is like. This is what might be better for you. This is how, let me make my decision that this is what I want to be involved in. There are certain things that people in this 21st century, we cannot take. So if people, older ones, understand that this is our choice and these are the people that we have to live with for the rest of our lives, not your life. It also comes down to respect. That openness between generations, that openness in the church, that openness within families on what marriage is really about, what it is about, and it's not some fairy tale. I think that goes a long way, and that would beat that phobia, because people are paranoid based on what they're seeing. They're not understanding the real story. They're not understanding the real deep intricacies of what a marriage is. So I think society has a role to play in that one as a whole. So that's my take.
Thank you, Vivian. And this brings us to our last myth. And I just want both of you to answer in 1 minute or less. Being single is not the will of God. True or false? Timmy.
False.
Timmy, you're muted.
Oh, I was saying Vivian started. I think she said false, but go ahead. Or do you want me to go ahead and do it? I'll do it. I'll go ahead. I think you said so. Being single is not the will of God. So in being single in the Bible, like I know in the Bible, there's a place where Paul talks about that he's like, he's encouraging us to be like, hey, being single gives us the opportunity for us to do the work of God, right? And then at the same time, there's another verse in the Bible that says that being married is a good thing, right? And being married is a good thing. I really do think that it depends on the person. Some people know that they prefer to be single. Some people know that they don't, that they want to be married. And I think it all depends on what God has placed in their heart, because some people in their marriage are able to be helpmates to still do the will of God, and some people who are single can also still do the will of God. So I just leave it like that.
Thank you. Vivian.
Yeah, I would say that's false. And in reference to what Timmy said, this 1 Corinthians 7 Message Bible, I always have this on my wall. And it says, don't be wishing you were someplace else or with someone else. Where you are right now is God's place for you. Live, obey, love, believe right there. God, not your marital status, defines your life. I think that's just like the final conclusion. I don't think God picked a person he could use because they were married or because they were single. He just said, I have this purpose for you. I want you to do it. Let's go together. Whatever else comes along the way, that's the beauty of it, but that's not the end of it. So
Thank you, Vivian. And I think one of the comments from Socks on First said the answer can be either true, it can be true and false. And I do agree that it does depend. The same Bible that says, it's better to be single. Another in Isaiah, it also says that none shall want for their mate. So it just depends on where you are. Some people can thrive being single, and some people genuinely desire to be married. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Adenyke.
No, thank you, Tutu. And I think that's a great point. When it comes to the will of God, like I always say, there's no marriage in heaven. Everything, the construct of marriage is really here. So for God to tie his overall vision to something that is just earthly and does not exist in an eternal world is an indication of what his will and is not his will, and what it is. And like we always say, relationships can make or break a person. So we want to go into it very carefully. But honestly, even the comments from our audience, Vivian and Timmy, woo, 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 you guys have been awesome. It's been great having you on the show. Fantastic perspective as singles, and very, very encouraging messages that has come from both of you. You really raised the bar to remind all of us about, the need for intimacy with God first and knowing what He has for us and growing every day so that we are always the better version of ourselves in anticipation, because your future spouse will thank you for having done this work. And, we look forward to when you do choose to get married, that it will be a moment of celebration for us, and we're super excited.
Yes, indeed.
You must invite us. So
Yes,
Indeed.
Like David. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on today's show. We are really, really glad to have you here. We look forward to the next episode, which is going to be on Saturday, July 3rd. And we're going to be asking the question, should we outlaw the in-laws?
Oh, that's a good one.
That is going to be a discussion and a half. You don't want to miss it. If you haven't, please subscribe to our YouTube channel here. Kindly, when we finish, if you can be so nice as to post this on your feed, make a comment, put it on your social media, encourage more people to learn the truth and the things that we've learned here as well. Thank you very much for being a part of the show, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thank you again, Vivian. Thank you, Timmy. And everyone, have a lovely, lovely weekend. Bye.